Right, hello TMP. Hope you're well, enjoying what is hopefully the last few days of the lockdown. Let's hope. Hey, look, I just wanted to explain the next step that we were going to do. So this is our work for the rest of the term, and it's actually a research project that you are going to do on a social action. Okay, it is worth 4 credits. We've got 5 weeks to finish it, so it's due on the last day of term. So there won't be any more like lessons per se where I give you extra work to do and extra learning to do. All your learning over the next 5 weeks is going to come through doing this research project, and you've got a lot of choice. So I thought it best just to go through and explain what we need to do, and I actually do think you will enjoy it. It'll be quite cool. Okay, so this project or research project is called Taking Action, and it is about looking at times where people have taken action and that action has changed something or indeed didn't change anything. So it's about how effective has this action taking been. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to describe a social justice and human rights action, 4 credits, and it's due on the last day of term, Friday the 25th of September. So you have got 5 weeks to do this. Your achievement criteria, aim for excellence, obviously. Comprehensive description of your social justice and human rights action. Okay, let's just talk about what we're going to do. So this activity requires you to write a report describing a social justice and human rights action of your choice. What do I mean by something as a social justice or human rights action of your choice? That will become clear as we look at the examples. You're assessed on the extent to which you evaluate the significance and effectiveness of your social justice and human rights action. So it could be a protest march, for example, and you are going to get good grades if you can actually discuss how significant it was and how effective it was. Yeah, as I said, we've got 5 weeks to work on this. We work on this in class and you work on it at home, and I work with you to make this really awesome. Okay, so the task I want you to do firstly is to select a social justice and human rights action. And there are some examples I've got here with links to resources. You might want to have your own. You might have your own example that you want to do. Absolutely. Just check with me that it's going to be suitable, that you're going to be able to achieve a really good mark. Just check with me if you've got a different one in mind. So the ones that are generally sort of encourage students to do, because there's quite a bit on them, they've got New Zealand context. One example is the Polynesian Panthers, the response of the Polynesian Panthers to the 1970s dawn raids in New Zealand. So if you didn't know, the dawn raids were where the police raided people's houses, raided Pacifica people's houses at dawn in the very early hours, and arrested people and would want to send them back to where they've come from, if they came from the islands, from Samoa or Tonga in particular. And so this was quite an interesting time in New Zealand history, and the Polynesian Panthers were formed as a response to this. And the Polynesian Panthers took their sort of ideas from the Black Panthers from the civil rights movement in the United States of America. So if you're interested in those two things, there's clear links between there, and which you might want to do. And there's tons and tons of resources on the Polynesian Panthers, particularly prevalent in Ponsonby in Auckland. Another one which you may not be familiar with is the protest actions against the 1981 Springbok tour to New Zealand. So 1981, just really quickly, South Africa had an apartheid system where blacks were kept separate from whites, and obviously the civil rights issues there. All other countries in the world had stopped playing sport with South Africa as a way of protest, except New Zealand. New Zealand maintained sporting connections with South Africa and invited the Springboks, South African rugby team, here in 1981. And they came here, and there were many, many protests. And people like Mr. Cotton on the staff, he lived through those protests and he was a part of them. Tons and tons of resources on there. You might want to have a look at that one also. Another one that does seem a bit popular as well is the campaign in the 1980s for the homosexual law reform in New Zealand. So homosexual acts were illegal up until 1985, I think it was, and homosexuals suffered all sorts of discrimination. Still tend to suffer discrimination today, but it's far, far worse before homosexuality was actually made legal. So that might be something you want to look at, particularly if you're interested in law and how that works. And a more recent example the actions of New Zealand supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020. So there's tons there, mostly news articles, I think, rather than sort of reflection, because it is so obviously very recent. But so you might want to choose that. So look, there's four examples. Choose one of them, or if you've got another one that you want to do, and just check the suitability with me. No, it doesn't have to be connected to New Zealand. You might want to do, I don't know, the Palestinian question with Palestine and Israel, Chechnya and Russia. You might want to go back in history, in the Irish, the IRA, fighting the English, Protestants and the Catholics. There's tons of protest movements. There's tons. So if you want to choose one, just check in with me and just make sure that there's going to be suitable resources there. Or just go ahead and choose one of these four. So as you can see here, I've just given you a link to a video for each one and some text for each one, which I think you might find useful should you choose one of these four. So that's the first task to do, is to decide what you want to do, which one you're going to do. And then secondly is to do the report. You're going to write a comprehensive report to describe the action. So I think it is worth just touching base on what you're going to have to do for that. There's 6 steps that you'll need to do. Provide background information on the event. Describe the action that was taken and its intended purpose. And there's a link here to link to public protest in New Zealand. If you're doing one in New Zealand, you might find that quite useful. Number 3, you've got to describe contrasting points of view. So you can't be one-sided. Hopefully we've learned it this year. You've got to have put different points of view in there. And the impact of the action. Did it have any impact? How effective was it? How impactful was the protest action that you're talking about? And number 5, describe the significance of the impact for society. What did it do? Did it change society? How did it do? How did it change society? How much? Or not? And number 6, so then you would describe the degree to which the action met its intended purpose. Okay, so did it actually meet its purpose, which we talked about, you would have talked about in number 2. Did it achieve that or not? So you don't have to choose one that achieves its intended purpose. That's fine. You can choose one that was complete failure. You just need to be able to describe it. Look, throughout your writing, there's 2 things you need to do. Include in your report relevant evidence to support your point of view. So you need dates, you need names, you need statistics, you need quotes. Okay, and also you really should put throughout your report evidence that you understand social studies concepts, like for example, social justice, it's human rights, the role of groups, responsibilities, family, community, and society. I would expect to see most of those terms in there in your description. And then lastly, you hand in your report with a reference list showing the sources of information you used, like the ones we've done in the past. Look, I've got below here, I've got an example of how to begin your report and how to give background information. So obviously, often starting is the hardest thing. Once you've chosen which one you're going to do, then you need to actually begin. So we've got here just an example. This one is about the Dakota pipeline access in the United States. And you can see here, this is a really good one. There's lots of evidence. There's names, there's statistics, there's references to who these people are, there's numbers, and then I've got these highlighted here. These are quite good points, and written down here in the right-hand column, there's a number 2 and number 1. You can see the student has used relevant social studies concepts, protests and environmental activists, and to describe the social justice and human rights action involving protests and litigation in an attempt to eventually stop the Dakota pipeline. Okay, so really specific what they did, what was the evidence that they gave, and using those social studies concepts. Okay, so that's an example of how to start. Look, I'm going to work alongside you, obviously, and help you every step of the way. And you can see they've got a nice quote in here as well. So this is a pretty good piece of work to begin with. So that will be doing numbers 1 and 2, the background action. It gives you an idea about what's sort of expected. I'd expect a paragraph like this for each of those 6 points at least. Okay, so that's that. Hopefully that all sort of makes sense. So by all means, begin. The first thing to do is decide which social action you're going to do. Might be something you know something about, might be something you know nothing about. It's entirely up to you, and just check with me and I've got a Google Sheets that will just keep track of how we'll go in the progress we're making. All right then, cool. Ka kite. See you soon, hopefully. Bye bye.